Alright, so the first thing you want to do is just get your original map into Photoshop, whether you scanned it or whatnot, and be sure that you're saving it as a PSD in case you have to come back to this later. So the first thing we're going to do is get an outline, make a new layer, or Control-Shift-N, rename it Land Outlines or something to that effect. We're going to zoom in a little bit here just so we can see this a bit better. We'll be using the brush tool for a lot of things, or you can press B on your keyboard to get to it. Let's get even a little bit closer there. So I'm starting off with diameter of 15 pixels, 100% hardness, 100% opacity, and flow. And now I'm just going to kind of slowly trace around the outlines of the islands here, and this is sped up a bit. I'm just voicing this over right now. So keep going. You can add any little wiggles or curves that you need to, in case you feel like changing it up a bit. But yeah, this does not have to be perfect by any means. And if you want to add a new section, you totally can. Just kind of keep moving your way around the map and tracing the outline of your major land masses. Now I'm going to do the same exact thing for the different lakes on my map. Just kind of zoom in and do an outline with the same brush tool. This shouldn't take you horrendously long. Go around there, get these smaller ones. Pretty simple. Now press W to get the magic wand tool, and we're going to go through and select each of the continents. Hold down Shift when you're clicking on the next one to kind of keep the train rolling. Press Control-Shift-I on your keyboard to invert your selection. Going to make a new layer, rename it Water. Oh, don't do that, not yet. Name it to Water. Then we're going to press G on our keyboard to get the gradient. We actually want the paint bucket tool, so click and hold on the icon if it's not showing up, and fill in all your water with a nice little blue color. Next, you want to double click on the layer or go to Layer Style, and we are going to be adding in a texture to the water. It just is a small little detail that helps it stand out more noticeably like water. It's blue, so it should be pretty obvious. If you don't see any textures you want, you can click on that little arrow there and you can see kind of some different preset lists. Don't hit save. I don't know what I was doing there. Kind of mess around with some of these in the settings until you get something that you like. So this third one in I think looks pretty good. Big scale. Alright, deselect that and you're good to go. Now I'll be adding in the actual land itself. And if you notice, I did fill in all of the water. I think this is going to work better. So some of the last things we did don't super apply. Just fill in the whole water layer. Make a new layer now. I'm going to call it landfill. Get yourself a nice color. So I'm going to use green for it. Again, using the magic wand tool to select inside of the continents. Shift clicking to select what we want the whole time. Now we're going to go ahead and go back to G on the keyboard to get the paint bucket fill. And we are just going to click it green. Press M or go there to deselect. So that's what it looks like without the outlines. Now we're going to go into layer style on the landfill and add a stroke, which basically just means outline. So I'm going to have the color black. I'm going to bump up the pixel size here a little bit. Let's make that 7. And everything else should be pretty good. So there's our new kind of land mass outline and everything. Here's what it was, but that's a little too big, so I think I like this way better. And it's going to be really helpful for us when we are changing things and doing rivers here in a minute. I want to change this island a little bit, so I'm using the lasso tool to select it. Then I'm going to press Control T to get free transform tool, and I'm going to just make it a little bigger. You can rotate it here if you want to, just kind of move it where you want and press enter on the keyboard. Then I'm going to add in some spots and kind of manipulate a little bit just by using the brush tool and the erase tool, using the same color as the land. And it's going to redraw the outline because we have the stroke effect as a layer style, which just saves us a lot of time by having to redo the outline manually. We're going to use the same principle to create rivers by erasing on the landfill layer. So with this eraser, that was 15, that looked a little too small to me. So I'm going to use the brackets on the keyboard to size that up to 20, and that looks much better. You can actually see the water in between the outline, which is sort of the point of drawing a river on your map, to see the water. So I'm going to go through the map here, open that up a little bit, and just draw in everywhere that there is a river. And when I say draw in, we are just erasing things. So back side of this mountain, flowing into that lake. See these triple lakes around this capital, or rivers rather, into this big lake, and kind of size it up or size it down as you need to. Widen that a bit. Connect this into that ocean. Add in this final river here, and I'm changing a little bit how it connects through these lakes, but it just goes right on through, and that's how you add rivers. There you go. Now we're going to add in some mountains, so make a new layer, and you can go ahead and call it mountains or whatever you really want, but mountains seems awfully appropriate because that's what we're drawing. I'm going to be using the brush tool. Again, just press B on your keyboard for that. I'm going to pick a sort of darkish gray here to start with, and I'm just going to be tracing the outlines and the dark portions of the mountain in this darker gray and sort of filling it in as I go. So again, just right along the outside edges. You can add some kind of jags if you want to make them look a bit more mountainous and less smooth. Just keep doing that through the whole section of mountain peaks here. Now, using the brush tool again, but a bit smaller and a lighter gray, go in and kind of draw the bottom part of it, and go back in with a thick one, and fill in the light side of the mountain. I'm using shift click with the brush tool to make those kind of straight big lines, just to speed up some of the process around it. You'll have to make the brush a little bit smaller to get into kind of some of those little crevices without writing over everything you've already done, but you can always go and correct any errors just in case. So just keep doing that, connect the bottom there, go through this whole mountain range there, and I think that's looking really good. I'm going to use the eraser tool, and again shift clicking to kind of take off the tops of some of these mountains, make them look a bit more jagged and rough. I'm going to press Control J to duplicate the layer, move it underneath the original one, and Control T to kind of put it where I want, then merge it down and rename it just to mountains. The next step is to draw in the other features of the terrain. So I'm going to start with pine trees here. So I'm going to have the original showing again, make a new layer, just call it trees. Back to the brush tool. I'm going to be starting with a kind of greenish color for the what would be like the needles and branches itself. Zoom in here, pick one of your trees that you think is the best one, because we're just going to copy and paste it a bunch. So start here, and I'm going to start on the lowest little section, trace it around. Gonna change the color a little bit lighter, moving up, and even lighter for the final top section there. Then, just like before with the mountains, go ahead and fill in each of the sections with the corresponding color. And you might want to touch up a little bit on the edges, as you can see where it might have got a little wonky. Now I'm going to pick a brownish color for the trunk. Real nice and close zoomed in here. Again, retouching up the edges. That looks pretty good. So now I am copying and pasting that a bunch. And as you can see, they might kind of overlap each other in some places. So just make sure before you merge the layers that you have them all in the right order so that it doesn't look goofy. But now you can go ahead and merge them. I'm going to rename it just so it stays as trees. And I think these actually are a little bigger than I wanted them to be. So I'm going to make a copy with Control J just in case. Control T to resize it, make it a little smaller. Let's hide the copy there. And that looks a lot better. So now I just need to fill in some space. So grab the lasso tool, select just this little clump over here, and again just copying and kind of pasting that, making sure that the layers aren't overlapping each other in weird ways that would really detract from the map. So just filling in more forests. After I have them all placed where I want them to be, I am again just going to merge all the layers, and I just keep pressing Control J. You can see there's a bunch of layers being built. Layer copy, layer copy. So I'm going to make sure that they're all good, like I was saying, and merge them all. I guess I didn't get to show that. Now it's the same exact process for these sort of maple trees, so I'm going to show you again the same thing, just sped up a bit. Here's a darker brown for the trunk, and we're going to use kind of bright orangish colors for the main section where the leaves would be in this tree. Make it a little bit more yellow for the next one, and it's almost going to look kind of like a candy corn going up. And again, just Control J. I'm going to use this, make a clump of them, flip it horizontally, and just keep pasting them in there, making sure again that they aren't overlapping weird before you merge them. Same process for cactuses, but I didn't like how they turned out, so I ended up deleting them. But if you want to see, here it is, really fast. One thing that I did like though is the sand, so use the magic wand to select this continent, and then I'm going to pick a nice yellow golden color here. That looks pretty good. Make a new layer, call it sand. I'm going to go to the brush tool, make sure you have the feathered edge brush here, get it pretty big, and then you just want to kind of paint on this, and the feathered edge is going to make it blend with the green. So now we have grass and we kind of have sand where the desert's going to be. The next step is to do the same process with the hills here. So new layer, hills, gonna change the color a little bit and just kind of trace around the top of the hill there. Shift click to make the hard bottom, but I don't super like how that looks. So what I'm gonna do is use the lasso to kind of select this bottom half, And then I'm going to again use the feather brush to go through and just make it blend a little bit better, touching it up the edges with the eraser tool or E on the keyboard, just so it doesn't look kind of goofy. And Control J, duplicate it, rotate it how you want to. Do that again. We're going to flip this horizontally, resize it a little bit, and that looks pretty good to me. So let's see, merge these layers, rename it hills. I'm going to change the hue and saturation a bit just because I didn't like how the first color turned out completely. Check the preview there, that looks good. And now we have some hills, so duplicate that, make a little smaller. I decided to add in some hills over here because there were supposed to be some, but they got covered up by the trees. So there's a new hill, and just pop it above the sand layer. The process is the same thing here with the palm trees, just going in with the brush and picking the best palm tree, kind of tracing in, adding a few details here and there. Then we are just going to duplicate the layer, move it around, and put it where we need to. Now I'll be putting in the cities just with the brush tool and kind of a dark gray. Just going through, I have it at size 30, just clicking where you want the cities to be on the map. Pretty simple, you can move them around from your original map if you want, or just leave them where they are. See, I snuck that one into a little pocket, that worked pretty well. Now for the capital, I'm going to take kind of a yellowish beige color, make a big circle there, and then use the shape tool, and if you have to change the library to shapes, you can to get the star. And just that same dark gray, put a star there, kind of duplicate that, drag it over to where the other capital is, and boom, it's that simple. To draw paths between cities, we're going to start with the brush tool. I'm going to use a bright red color so it stands out. And we want to go into these kind of brush presets over here, brush settings. So turn on dual brush, and you can mess around with some of these settings until you can see the live preview at the bottom as I'm changing it there. Just until it looks like a path. It should almost remind you of like a treasure map, kind of a follow the dotted line sort of thing. So diameter 25. I'm going to put the spacing to about, let's see, 175 looks good to me. Count is 8. Click back on the thing to get that out of there. And just sort of draw your lines between the cities. Moving this pretty quick because the most important part is the settings, and then just draw wherever you drew on your map, or add in some new paths if you want to. With that said and done, now it's time to start naming our cities. So we are just going to pop this open, the original, to kind of remind ourselves the names a little bit. Then we're going to press T to get to the text tool. And for right now, I'm using the font called Eccentric, which is just one of the ones pre-built into Photoshop. I actually ended up changing this a bit later because I really liked how it looked, but it was a little harder to read than I wanted. And I'm using font size 36 and just white. So the original font looks pretty cool, but again, I changed it. It's hard to read. The stroke is just black stroke, maybe 3 to 6 pixels. Just duplicating each layer and retyping what the actual name is, kind of placing them where they need to be. At the end of all this, I'm going to make a folder just called city names or something like that, and pop them all underneath into that folder in the layers panel, just so that's a little easier to navigate so we don't have to see all of them at once. For the next part, press P to get the pen tool and draw a line where you want to name something. Press T again, and if you click on the line, then it'll draw kind of along that axis. And so I'm going through just using black text now to name all the little things. So for this one, I don't want it necessarily along a different axis, well, kinda, but I'm just gonna actually rotate it to get it where I want to. So Control T to move that into place, and just so the font now is Gabriola, which I think is a little easier to read. But still looks kind of fantasy-like. So placing the big names sort of first. Again, we're going to use the pen tool here, kind of drag it a bit, and press T to get text back, and type Cold Creek right along there. So that looks pretty good. Just going through, again, Sleeping Giant Foothills, big curve in the name, just follows right along the path with the pen tool. And just keep going through, and you can add in as many or as few sort of names as you want to. I'm going to tuck that right in that little nook. So I'm actually adding a few extras that I didn't have on my original map, because it seemed like some of these things should have names, and kind of the more names the better. You can make them nice and small so that it really only sticks out in detail when you zoom in on the map. It doesn't take away from the bigger picture. It doesn't get too busy. Oh, I got small. Let's make that bigger. Don't know how that happened. But yeah, that's looking real good. Last step is to draw in our unique features. So I'm going to start, just trace this little water monster with purple, and then kind of like with everything else, just go back through with the brush tool, fill it in, touch up where you need to, add in some sharp teeth for him. Get his eye going here, and I'm going pretty quick through this because it's really the same process that I've done. I'm going to move it up there now onto the cloud. Just painting in dark to start with, and add in a little bit of texture so I kind of keep moving forward. Drop the opacity so I can see what I'm doing. I don't like how those two, so let's get rid of those two. Hold Alt, by the way, what I just did, hold Alt on the keyboard with the brush tool, and then click to make whatever color you click on your active color. Drawing in the lightning there. Ooh, drag down a little bit. Again, shift clicking to make things straight lines. I'm going to use the eraser to sharpen up that very bottom one a little bit. Duplicate it. Flip it over, kind of move it around, do what we got to do, rotate some, and that's the process for clouds. One last little thing here is I'm going to add in the port. So get the rectangle selection tool so that we're kind of working just within that. Paint the inside brown, then going through with the small brush tool, a little bit different color brown, and just adding in some kind of texture, some wooden planks. This doesn't have to be perfect, as you can see, it's just to convey the point. Then we're going to go to Edit, Transform, Skew, and bend it a little bit so it looks more like it's lying on the map instead of just kind of weird top down from outer space. Whoa, careful. And drawing some legs into the water, and you've got yourself a dock. I'm going to drop it behind the cities layer there, but that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching part 4 of how to make a D&D world map. You can go through and add in as many or as few unique features or titles of geographic areas on your map, but that is the gist of it. Hopefully things weren't too fast and I explained things fully, but to read the full article, go to thealpinedm.com.